The Lucid Gravity has been one of the most highly anticipated electric vehicles of 2025. And now that Lucid is delivering them to customers, they have a few extra vehicles that they can put out into a press fleet. And I was lucky enough to snag one of those this week to do range and charge testing. After completing a couple 0 to 100% charge recordings, one on a 400 kilowatt Iona charger and another on a Tesla V3.5 supercharger, I charged the vehicle up to 100% to head out onto the New Jersey Turnpike and do a 70-mile-an-hour highway range test, as I do with all electric vehicles. However, things didn't go quite as expected. And I even received a phone call from Lucid the day after I completed the range test. So you're going to want to watch this one to the very end. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to State of Charge. I'm out here at a Tesla supercharger station charging a 2026 Lucid Gravity Grand Touring. I'm charging her up to 100% on these Tesla supercharger here, and without an adapter, because the Lucid Gravity comes standard with a NACS port. So I didn't need any adapter, just plugged the Tesla connector in and she's charging up. I'm charging it up to 100% because I'm going to be heading out onto the highway now and doing my 70-mile-an-hour highway range test with the Lucid Gravity. Now, conditions aren't perfect today. We're in the second week of October now, and it's getting chilly here in northern New Jersey. We're going to start the range test off at about 59 degrees, and it's supposed to get down into the low 50s overnight. There's also about a 10-mile-an-hour south wind. So between the temperature and the wind, I think the Gravity is starting off a little handicapped here today, but we'll talk about that as the range test goes on. I would have loved to grab one of these in the middle of the summer when it was 80, 85 degrees and tested it in perfect conditions, but that wasn't to be. But people drive all year round, so it's not like you get to pick the temperature that you drive in. So this is absolutely a worthwhile range test, but we'll talk a little bit about what I think the effect of the weather on the vehicle is today once we get in the car and start driving. So I'm almost at 100%. We're going to hop out onto the New Jersey Turnpike, drive up and down the Turnpike until the 123 kilowatt hour battery pack in the Gravity is exhausted. I'm hoping to get as much out of this battery pack as I can. I love to end the range test at 0% state of charge, but it all depends on how I can turn around and head back to the charger. I don't want to run out. I don't have a support team here in case I run out on the side of the highway, but I'm getting pretty good at running the battery down to 0 and ending up right at a charger. And there's a lot of charging stops available for me on the Turnpike, so I should be able to get pretty close to 0. Now, the vehicle has an EPA range rating of 450 miles. That's the combined EPA range rating. The highway range rating would obviously be less than that, but this is the best Lucid Gravity as far as range is concerned. It's got the right wheel combination, the most aerodynamic wheels. All the Lucid Gravities come with staggered wheels, and this has 20-inch wheels on the front and 21-inch wheels on the back. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we're driving. Now, I'm almost at 100%. I'm going to unplug when we hit 100%, head right out onto the New Jersey Turnpike, and we'll join you again once we're on the road and talk a little bit about the conditions and also what I do to set the vehicles up for these highway range tests. State of Charge is powered by Qmerit, North America's premier installer of electric vehicle charging equipment. After I've helped you decide which charger to buy, follow the link in the description of my videos and have Qmerit install it. And if you do follow that link, Qmerit will waive the $150 installation deposit. But this is an exclusive offer for State of Charge followers. So in order to get that offer, you must follow the link in the description of my videos. All right, so I'm out on the New Jersey Turnpike cruising along at 70 miles an hour. However, I do have Lucid's Dream Drive set to 71 miles an hour. because when I checked the speedometer to GPS, it was off by 1 mile an hour at 70 miles an hour. So we are cruising at 70 miles an hour, although there's an indicated 71 miles an hour. Okay, let's talk about the other things we do to make sure the car is set up properly. I always set the tire pressure to the manufacturer specs. In the case of this Lucid Gravity Grand Touring with the staggered wheels, all the Gravities have staggered wheels. The rear wheels are 1 inch bigger than the front wheels, but the one that I have here has the base wheel package, which is the most aero, and it is 20-inch wheels in the front, 21-inch wheels in the back. So the front tires are 265/50 R20s, and the rears are 285/45 R21. They're the Hankook Ion EV rated tires. There are larger wheel options for the Gravity. You can get it with 21s in the front and 22s in the back, and also 22-inch in the front and 23-inch in the back. This is the smallest wheel package with the most aerodynamic wheels. I asked Lucid to provide me with the best wheels for range. So I mentioned that the Gravity is rated at 450 miles per charge, this version here. It has a 123 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's pretty much the usable capacity. The total capacity might be slightly larger than that, but I should be able to access 123 kilowatt hour here today, or at least very close to that. I also set the climate control to 70 or 71 degrees, whatever keeps me comfortable, and on the lowest fan setting. Now, I mentioned it's cool, and it is cool. It's down to 57 degrees already, and we just started the range test. It's going to get down to the low 50s overnight. The reason why I'm doing it overnight, and I apologize if the video isn't as clear as it usually is, it's because this is going to be a long range test, and I didn't want to run into rush hour traffic. I wasn't sure I'd be able to do it in between the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour here in New Jersey. The turnpike gets pretty clouded, pretty clogged up. So I figured I'm going to do these range tests at night when I know that I can maintain a steady speed. It's the most fair to the vehicle. But the only negative with that is it's a little cooler at night. And now that we're into October, it's a lot cooler. Ideally, we'd like to do range tests in the 80 degrees with no wind. It's in the 50s here, and there is considerable wind. My wind app's telling me it's somewhere between 9 and 10 miles an hour. And right now it's coming from the north. It's southerly blowing wind, and we're traveling south on the turnpike. So we would be aided by that now, but pretty soon we're going to turn around and head north, and then it's going to be a headwind. So not ideal conditions by any means. I'd go as far as to say, if these conditions continue, the wind, I know what the temperature is going to be. I've seen the weather forecast. If the wind stays like this, I think it's probably going to be about a 30-mile penalty altogether between having no wind and driving at 80, 85 degrees out, and driving at 52, 53 degrees with a 10-mile-an-hour wind. So that's significant. But hey, people drive in all kind of weather, all kind of climate. We'll just be cognizant of that when we talk about the final results at the end, what you might be able to expect if the weather conditions were better, and also what you might be able to expect if the weather conditions are worse, because it certainly gets a lot worse than 50 degrees and a 10-mile-an-hour wind. Okay, well, I'm going to keep driving. We will check in, as I always do, every 25% of the range test. I'll check in when it's 75% state of charge, 50% state of charge, 25%. And then on that final drive, when I only have a mile or two to the charging station and the battery's just about depleted, and we'll do the wrap up then. But the next check-in is going to be at 75% state of charge, and we'll see just how far the gravity's gone. Alrighty, quarter of the range test is over. I'm at 75% state of charge, and I have driven 89.1 miles. I have a consumption rate of 3.14 mile per kilowatt hour. and the vehicle is telling me that I have used 28.3 kilowatt hour. So we are tracking around 355-ish miles, nearly 100 miles less than the EPA range rating. Let me just make a lane change here because there's a slow-moving truck. Get around him. And while I certainly didn't expect to hit the combined EPA range rating at 70 miles an hour in 55-degree weather now with 10 mile an hour wind, I was hoping to get to close to 400 miles. I don't think we're gonna here today. Now, things can change in the range test, but part of what makes me a little pessimistic is most of this first leg was done with that 10 mile an hour wind behind us. Now, it's not perfectly behind us. It's coming in kind of from the side, but it is pushing south, and we were driving south for like 80% of that first 25%. Now I'm heading north, and I can already see the consumption rate is starting to go down, or go up actually. The number's going down, but that means we're consuming more. So I think this second quarter of the range test, when we drive from 75% to 50%, is going to be a lot less efficient, and we're not going to go that far. We'll see when we're at there, when we're at 50%. But for now, I'm a little pessimistic about this. I think we're going to finish up at around 340 to 350, but we'll see. That's just my initial impressions, and that's a lot less than the EPA range rating, a lot less what I honestly expected to do here today, even in these conditions. So we'll continue to drive along. I'll check back in at 50%, but there's one last thing that I want to mention that I forgot to mention, and now let me get over because I don't want to block traffic. When I talked earlier about how I set up the cars for the range test, I did forget to mention the driving mode. I always put the vehicle in the most efficient driving mode. And with Lucid vehicles, the Air's the same way. They have 3 driving modes. Smooth is the most efficient driving mode. They also have Swift and Sprint, but Smooth is the most efficient, Sprint being the least efficient, the most powerful. And I also am able to lower the suspension in Lucid vehicles. The gravity here allows me to set the ride height to low, which will help with our aerodynamics. So I did that. We're in the most efficient driving mode, and the suspension is set down to low. All right, well, we'll check back in at 50%. And, I'm going to make a guess here. I think we're going to go 5 or 6 miles less than we did in the first leg. So we went 89 miles. I'm going to say like 84 miles. How about that? We'll see how close I get to it, and check back in at 50%. All right, checking in at 50% state of charge. Half the range test is over, and thankfully, because it's after midnight, and this is going to be a really late night for me, but half of it's over. Okay, we have gone 173.1 miles, which means, yes, we went exactly 84 miles in that segment of the range test. The consumption rate now is 3.01 mile per kilowatt hour. As I expected, that quarter of the range test was not nearly as efficient as the first quarter because we had that headwind. We have a total kilowatt hour used at this point of 57.5, which means in that leg we used 29.2 kilowatt hour, a little bit more than we did in the first leg, but we're still tracking a lot less than what we should be. The Gravity is supposed to have a usable capacity of 123 kilowatt hour, but if you double the 57.5, you're only going to get like 115. So is there going to be more kilowatt hour at the end for us to access? We'll find out in the second half of the range test, but for now, it doesn't appear as though I'm going to be able to access the full 123 kilowatt hour, and that's why we're trailing in the miles. We're still only tracking like 350 miles, which is 100 miles less than the combined EPA range rating. Now, the highway EPA range rating would obviously be lower than the combined EPA range rating, but it's usually only about 20 miles less. It's hard to get the highway and city EPA range ratings now from the EPA. It used to be easy. They used to publish it. Now you got to really search documents, and I haven't been able to locate that yet. But if the combined EPA range rating is 450, I'm guessing the highway is probably around 430-ish. But even that highway is much easier than 70 miles an hour. Their highway test is, I think, around 50 or 55 miles an hour, something like that. And we're driving a constant 70 miles an hour here, so it's not surprising that we don't get to the highway EPA range rating, but it's still, as I said, a little surprising. I really thought we were going to get closer to 400 miles. Now that half the range test is over, I'm pretty sure we're not. I think we're going to finish up around 350-ish, but things can change. We'll see what happens in the second half of the range test. I'll check back in at 25% state of charge, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, we're at 25% state of charge. I only have a quarter of the range test to go, and I'm very thankful for that because I'm getting tired. It's about 1:30 in the morning now. I started right at 10 o'clock, and my strategy worked. Turnpike's nice and clear, haven't had any slowdowns. It's really been a perfect range test, other than the fact that we've had about a 10-mile-an-hour wind the whole time, which is certainly not ideal. Okay, as for how we're doing, we are now at 259.2 miles, which means we drove 86.1 miles in that segment. Our consumption now is 2.98 miles per kilowatt hour. So we dropped below 3 miles per kilowatt hour, although barely. Our total kilowatt hour consumed is 86.7, which means we used 29.2 kilowatt hour in that segment, exactly the same amount that we used from 75% down to 50%. Now these stats, the miles driven as well as the kilowatt hours that we've consumed and the consumption rate, all equal a final number of 245 miles. So it looks like that's where we're going to end up, right around 245 miles. And it doesn't appear as though we're going to be able to get the full 123 kilowatt hour that we're supposed to. Now maybe Lucid has a big low-end buffer. They typically don't. They do have a low-end buffer, not that big, but I'm talking about the air. Maybe they have a different strategy for gravity, but I'm not going to drive it that much beyond zero. My goal is going to be to try to get to the charging station right at zero and call it quits then and charge up and head home. As it is, I'm probably not going to be even plugging in till at least 3 o'clock in the morning. And anyway, I don't particularly like to drive the cars till they die. I don't think most people would want to do that. Zero is good enough for me. I consider the range test done when we're at 0% state of charge. So that's going to be the goal. Now, the only other thing that I want to talk about is the power that the Gravity Grand Touring has. This thing has 828 horsepower and it launches. Now, I haven't been able to have fun with it on the range test because basically set the cruise control and let Dream drive the whole way. But I did play around with it today. I drove it a bit before I did this range test. And this thing launches. It feels faster than my quad motor first gen Rivian R1S. I think it's close, but it actually feels like it's faster. I think Rivian publishes a 3.4 second 0 to 60 time for this, and I think there's been some news outlets out there that have actually clocked slightly better times. Let me get over because a truck is like cutting into my lane. That was not cool, buddy. But in any event, This thing is a blast to drive, way more fun than what you would think a 7-passenger. Well, I think this is more like a minivan. I know it's called an SUV, but it looks more like a minivan to me. 7-passenger people hauler should ever have. This thing is a blast to drive. And as far as driving on the highway, super quiet, super smooth. The wind noise is almost non-existent here at 70 miles an hour. Definitely quieter than the average electric vehicle is at speed. It's quieter than my Rivian R1S for sure. And I'm only comparing it to that because my Rivian is a 7-passenger electric, all-wheel drive vehicle, which is what this is. It's a dual motor, all-wheel drive, and it's got a tremendous amount of power and kick. Of course, in the smooth drive mode, you get the least amount. Sprint is the real mode that you want to put it in if you really want to have some fun, but that's not for the range tests. So, okay, I'll check back in when I get off the highway and I'm on that final mile or two to the charger. We'll talk a little bit about the results and what I think about coming, what I believe is going to be at least 100 miles short of what the combined EPA rated range is. So we'll check back in then. All right, well, I just turned off the highway. I am at 1% state of charge, but I've been on 1% state of charge for like at least 2 miles. So maybe 3 miles actually, because I know it's been there for a while. Now I'm sitting at a red light and I am half a mile from the charger. So we actually are going to go to the same supercharger that we started out at. That's what I really like to do. I like to start and end at the same location, and that really completely negates any elevation change that you might have done during the range test, even though the New Jersey Turnpike is relatively flat. So that's why I choose that, and I do these long loops so that if there is wind and even a little elevation change, it tries to negate that as much as possible. And today we had wind. This was not a great day for range testing. It's at 52 degrees now, so it's not bitter cold, but it's not warm by any means. In the 80s Fahrenheit, I find to be the best for range testing. But hey, we're in the 50s today. It is what it is. We had some wind. I think it probably robbed us of, what's going on here? It probably robbed us of about 30 miles. I bet that if this was at 80 degrees out with no wind, 25 miles at least I would have done better, probably 30 miles better than what we're going to finish up here today. So let me see the Wawa where the superchargers are, right up here on the left. I don't want to miss it while I'm talking. And right, I think it's at the next light. Yeah, that's what the navigation says. Right past this light here, and there is the Wawa. And it turned green just in time.
Now turn left and then you will reach your destination.
Exactly. Blinker on. Turning left into Wawa. Where premium gas is $3.49.9, but we don't need to go to the gas stations. Going around to the back of the Wawa, and right here are the superchargers, and it still says 1% state of charge, but I tell you, it has to be ready to click over because I've been on that for more than 3 miles. And let me see what it says for the remaining miles. So it says 3 miles remaining, and I'm at 1% state of charge. I'm actually going to back into the exact same supercharger that I charged at before the range test. Let me back into this guy here. The automatic braking of Lucid stopped me, even though I have 20 inches to go. I'm gonna get a little closer. Okay, park. All right, I can leave this on for now. So it still says 3 miles remaining and 1% state of charge. And the final stats are 345 miles, 115 kilowatt hour access. If we have 3 miles remaining, maybe there's 1 kilowatt hour in there, unless there's a buffer that goes beyond the range estimator, and when that hits 0, you can drive a little farther. It's possible. 3.00 mile per kilowatt hour. So I mean, that makes sense. 3 mile per kilowatt hour, 115 kilowatt hour accessed. There's your 345 miles. Still 105 miles less than the combined EPA range rating. Let's say we give it the 30 miles that I'm pretty confident I would get if I did this with 80, 82 degrees out and less wind, say under 5 miles an hour. That's still 375 miles and still 75 miles less than the combined EPA range rating. It's hard to complain about going almost 350 miles at 70 miles an hour in 55-degree weather. But Lucid sets that bar and says it's 450 mile, 7-seat SUV. I don't know what circumstance would allow this to go 450 miles, even in the best of conditions and driving slower. I'm sure if I drove this even at 60 miles an hour, it's not going to go 450 miles. It'll probably do 400, but not 450. So, it is what it is. We know the EPA range ratings aren't the best metric, and it's just interesting how some vehicles perform better against their EPA range rating than others. Some vehicles, like Porsche vehicles, for instance, constantly outperform their EPA range rating. When I did the Lucid Air Dream Edition range test, 70 mile an hour highway range test, I was actually the first person that Lucid allowed to do that a few years back. I went exactly 500 miles. I think it was range rated at like 512 or something at the time, or 506, something like that, right over 500 miles an hour. I nearly matched the EPA range rating at 70 miles an hour. And then there's other vehicles that typically underperform their range rating. I find that most Tesla vehicles, not all, but most, seem to underperform their EPA range rating. So it's just odd how some vehicles match it, some vehicles outperform it, and then other vehicles underperform it. And you wonder why is that? You would think almost most of the vehicles would be close to the same percentage off. This was a huge difference, 105 miles. But as I said, it still went 345 miles at 70 miles an hour. And this isn't SUV. It's a 7-passenger SUV. I can count the number of EVs on one hand that can drive 345 miles at 70 miles an hour. But Lucid set that bar and said it's 450, and that's what they're testing. And I mean, the EPA is certifying it at that, so they agree with how the test was performed, the data that was given to them. What's interesting to me most is this is supposed to have 123 kilowatt hour of usable energy, and I've only accessed 115. So I want that other 8 kilowatt hour. If I can average 3 miles per kilowatt hour for those other 8 kilowatt hour, that's another 24 miles. So now we're at just about 360. And then if the weather was better, we'll give it that 30 miles. Now you're at 390. Now it's almost a 400 mile vehicle at 70 miles an hour. But for whatever reason, I'm at 1% and 3 miles remaining, and I'm 8 kilowatt hours shy. Now this vehicle only had like 2,100 miles when I got it, so it's not like it's an old vehicle and the battery's degraded. So I will ask Lucid about that, why I was only able to access 115 kilowatt hour. And I mean, that 123 is supposed to be the usable amount, not the total capacity of the pack. And I wasn't able to get that much. It's really the first time that I had that much less accessed than what is published on one of my range tests. Sometimes I actually get more with the GM vehicles. they say with their large 24 module battery packs that it's 205 kilowatt hour usable, and I was able to pull like almost 230 kilowatt hour out of it. So they actually seem to under publish what their battery capacity is, and the customer gets more. So but in this case I got less, but I still it's hard to complain that I went 345 miles at 70 miles an hour in not great conditions. It's tough for me to sound like I'm disappointed in the vehicle, but again, you know, you hear that 450 number. I thought I was in for close to 400 miles of driving tonight, and luckily for me, it's 309 now, and I'm pretty tired. I don't know if you can see it in my eyes, but I'm pretty beat. So I am going to plug in now. Only charge up to enough to get home. I'm not doing a full charge recording in here, but I am going to do a full 0 to 100% charge recording with the Gravity on a Tesla supercharger. I'm going to go to one of the new V4 sites. Now, it's not a true V4 site by me. I know they just opened up one in California that's a true V4 site. Mine's like the V3.5, but I'm going to do a full 0 to 100% charge recording at that site. I've already done the charge recording 0 to 100 at an Iona 400 kilowatt charger, an EVgo 350 kilowatt charger, and I have the data from my friend Kyle Connor's recording on a ChargePoint 400 kilowatt DC fast charger. So what I'm going to do is, after I do the Tesla recording, I'm going to put all 4 of those recordings 0 to 100% on a graph and compare them. The EVgo, the Iona, the ChargePoint, and the Tesla charging sessions, and we'll talk about Gravity charging. It's a charging beast on any charger. I mean, you can add 0 to 80% in under 30 minutes. And again, this is a large battery pack. So even if you go on my range test of 345 miles, 70% of that is what, like 280 miles? So you could add 280 miles in like 26 or 27 minutes of charging. And that's pretty good. I suspect the Tesla charger is going to charge the slowest. Too bad they don't have their true V4 sites open all over the place. I'd love to charge this on one of those. Maybe I will in the future. But for now, that's going to be the next Gravity video that you'll see from me, is that deep dive charging analysis of the vehicle, charging on 4 different DC fast chargers. All right, well, I'm tired. I'm going to plug in, and that's a wrap on the Lucid Gravity Grand Touring 70 mile an hour highway range test. But no, that's not the end of this story. All right, I'm back with bonus footage. So I can't get the vehicle to charge at any of these Tesla superchargers. I've just moved it over to 3 different stalls and it's not charging. Even the stall that I charged in before, it just won't initiate charging. I don't understand it. So, and I've charged this on other Tesla superchargers, and the NACS connector at the Iona station, I don't know why, but I'm here now. It's 3:30 in the morning. Since I talked to you last, the vehicle has dropped from 1% to 0% state of charge just by sitting here. And now it says 2 miles remaining range. There is an Electrify America site a little more than a mile from here. I think I can make it, so let's try. I'm going to put it in drive. Let's see if it goes. It is going. I have the directions on my phone. So let me see here. Let me see, recenter. Okay. It's really in like a strip mall right next door, but still, battery critically low, I'm getting warnings. So let's see how we make it here. Let me follow this out here. Okay. Well, it's got a little push. It's not like a sponge when I step on it. There's a big truck here. You don't want to have a fight with a big dump truck. All right. So now I'm coming out on the road here, and this Electrify America site is one of the sites that I've used in the past when I do my range tests. And I do have my CCS to NACS adapter. I brought one just in case I needed to use a CCS station, but I was hoping to just charge at that supercharger. Okay, so now it's in the back of this mall. Still at 2 miles remaining, so I guess I'm probably gonna make it because I have less than a mile to go. 0% state of charge. Now I'm not gonna add this extra mile to the range test because I'm doing it at like 30 miles an hour. But at least you can see that the vehicle wasn't dead when I finished it at 345 miles. It still had some left in it. So I haven't used this site in a while because there's only 3 DC fast chargers. Well, I think it was actually the first Electrify America site in the state of New Jersey. And it's always packed, but it's 3:32 in the morning now, so I think I'll get a stall. But during the day, it's always packed. As a matter of fact, I just went down and spoke with Electrify America about a whole bunch of different topics. I just posted that video, an interview I had with them. And before we started the official interview, I actually talked to them about this site. And I was like, are you guys going to add extra sites here? It's always packed. And they're like, we know that's one of our sites that has very high utilization. And the problem is with the utility, they can't give them more power. So they said, it's easier for us to open up another site close by, like, within, less than 10 miles. It will cost less than adding 3 or 4 more stalls to this site. So they're like, we could do like a 10 stall site nearby for less than what it would cost us to add 4 or 5 stalls to this site. So I guess that's going to be the strategy. And as I figured, there's nobody here. So now there's 1 mile remaining. Let's plug her in. And let's see. I might as well let the cameras roll while I'm doing this to make sure that I'm actually going to make it home tonight. Otherwise, I'm just going to sleep in the car here in the parking lot. I'm not going to call my wife at 3:30 and ask her to come with the Lightning, because the Lightning with the Pro Power on board can charge this thing. So I'll literally just sleep in the parking lot. All right, so I'm going to go out now and let's see if this works. I have my CCS to NACS adapter, and I'll be right back. And yes, I'm charging. Electrify America saves the day. Okay, it looks like I'll be getting home after all. Well, it's 3:37 now. I'm only going to charge enough to get home, which with this vehicle on a 350 kilowatt charger is like 5 minutes. So that's a wrap. Yep, we're up to 2% already. Whew, I'm making it home. One thing I realized I didn't do before I signed off, probably because I'm exhausted, was do a summary of this range test. So let's take a look at that now. All right, in the first quarter of the range test, from 100% down to 75%, I went 89.1 miles. I used 28.3 kilowatt hour, and my consumption rate was 3.14 miles per kilowatt hour. From 75% down to 50%, I drove 84 miles, and that gave me a total of 173.1. We used 29.2 kilowatt hour in that quarter for a total of 57.5 kilowatt hour. And now my consumption was down to 3.01 miles per kilowatt hour. From 50% down to 25%, I went 86.1 miles for a total of 259.2 miles. I had used the same amount in that quarter as I did in the previous, 29.2 kilowatt hour, for a total of 86.7 kilowatt hour used. And now my consumption was down to 2.98 miles per kilowatt hour. And in the final quarter, from 25% down to actually 1%, not 0%. Well, it did turn to 0 as I was sitting there. We drove 85.8 miles for a total of 345 miles, and we used 28.2 kilowatt hour for a total of 115.0 kilowatt hour used, and the consumption rate was 3 miles per kilowatt hour. That gave us the final result of 345 miles driven, 115 kilowatt hour used, 3 miles per kilowatt hour was the consumption, with 3 miles of remaining range. And the interesting thing is, when I charged the vehicle up to 100% and left the Tesla supercharger, I checked the estimated range. It said 344 miles. So it was off by 1 mile. Now, of course, I have 346 miles on it now because I drove a little bit farther, but you know, that wasn't at 70 miles an hour, and it actually says 115.3 kilowatt hour used. So in 346.0 miles, but I'm not going to count that because that was at low speed, and this is a 70 mile an hour highway range test. I only count the last mile that it takes me to get from the highway to the charger. But well, that's a wrap on this range test. I'm charging up. I've been here for a couple of minutes, and it has added 90 miles of estimated range. I'm already at 20% state of charge. That's how fast this thing charges. But that's a video for another day, which, as I promised, will be the next Lucid Gravity video that I produce, the one on a deep charging analysis. Again, thanks for watching, and good night. All right, 345 miles, not really a great result for a vehicle that has an EPA range rating of 450 miles. Even when you consider that the driving conditions weren't great, it was a little cooler than what I like to do range tested, and we did have that wind. So I messaged Lucid the next morning. I let them know what the results were. I always tell the OEMs what my range test results are before I publish a video. And quite frequently what they do is they'll notify their engineers, and they can look at the data from the range test. And I actually like that because from time to time they provide me feedback. And I got some feedback this time. A couple of things. Number one, and most importantly, when the engineers took a look at the full range test, they noticed that there's actually a problem with the rear drive unit of this vehicle. And that likely impacted the results of the range test. Lucid also told me that when I ended the range test, the vehicle had about 6 kilowatt hour of usable capacity left. Now, the vehicle said that I had accessed 115 kilowatt hour at that point, and I was at 0% state of charge. If you add the 6 kilowatt hour, that brings us up to 121 kilowatt hour usable. But it shouldn't have read 0 if there was 6 kilowatt hour left. That's a huge low end buffer. I don't think that's exactly how the vehicle is set up to be normally. So was there a state of health miscalculation? I'm not sure, but hopefully we'll be able to figure that out in the future when I do another range test. We ended up with what we ended up with, but Lucid offered to send me another vehicle. Problem with that is, here, I live in New Jersey, here on the East Coast, we have a nor'easter coming up the East Coast. It's going to hit later tonight. It's going to be here for about 3 days. And then 4 days from now, I leave for 2 different trips that I'm going to be taking. So I don't have any time to repeat this test now, unfortunately. So we're going to have to wait on that. Now, they did agree to provide me with another vehicle at a later time. I may even fly out to Arizona and do the range test in their area, because now I'm pushing this back into November. It gets cold here in New Jersey in November. It could be in the 30s and the 40s, and that'll severely impact the range test. So look for a follow-up range test. Hopefully I can do it in a warmer climate area with a vehicle that doesn't have a problem. And there's one other thing that they noticed during the range test. They told me that the rear climate control was on and on the lowest setting. That's not ideal either. I'm certain that I turned it off. I don't know what happened. I don't know how it turned itself back on. Maybe I turned it off before I did the charging at the supercharger, and then when I turned the vehicle back on, it automatically turned it on. I honestly don't remember. But they did tell me it was on. Now, that wouldn't have that big of an effect, a few miles. but full disclosure, I want to make sure everything's on the level. I always turn off all the climate control except for the driver's side and set it to the lowest temperature or the highest temperature, whatever. I like it so that I'm just barely comfortable and I'm using the least amount of heat or air conditioning that I need to just to keep me barely comfortable for the range tests. And that was the case with this range test. I was on the edge of being cool. I wasn't warm by any means. So I don't know, whatever heat was getting pumped into the back seat, it wasn't warming up the cabin that much. But they noted that, so I want to pass that on to you guys. So this 345-mile result was in cool weather with wind, with a vehicle that has a problem with the rear drive unit, and I perhaps had they told me I had the climate control on the rear seating on low. So, it is what it is. That's the results. I promise I'm going to redo this range test, but for now, this is what's going to stand. We did 3 miles per kilowatt hour. We ended up with 345 miles until I do another range test and have different results. That's what we're going to go with here for now. And unfortunately, it wasn't even close to what I had hoped to get. Well, not really hoped to. I let the cards fall where they may, but what I expected to get, I figured we were going to be around the 380, 390, close to 400 mile mark in this cooler temperatures, and we didn't even get close to that. So I'm tending to believe that there was a problem with the rear drive unit that made the poor results. Now, Lucid came and picked up the vehicle the next day, and I'm only 3 days into a 7-day loan, but they don't want me doing anything else with the vehicle. They came up and picked it up the next morning. So there must be a problem with the rear drive unit, and they don't want me or anybody else driving it the way it is until they swap that out or fix whatever the issue is. I'm also going to note that I definitely observed some software glitches. And this isn't a secret. Some of the people that have taken possession of the Gravity now, it's only been delivered for a short while now, not too many people have them yet. I've seen on the boards that the people are experiencing software glitches, and that's not uncommon with a new vehicle that just comes out, particularly from one of the newer OEMs like Rivian or Tesla or Lucid. They tend to push vehicles out maybe a little bit before they're fully baked, just to get them out there. And I think that happened with the Lucid Air too. There were some software glitches when it first went out, and but Gravity owners are definitely reporting that, and I noticed the same thing. So I mean, all of this could have conspired to produce poor results for this range test. I'm not apologizing for it. It ended up with 345 miles, but I do hope to get an opportunity to have seat time in one, perhaps in November, maybe in a warmer climate, and redo the test, make sure everything's set perfectly, the car's set up right, there's no problems with any of the drive units, and we'll do it over and we'll see how far the Gravity goes. But that's it for today. That's really it. This is really going to be the end of the video. Not great for the 2026 Lucid Gravity, but hopefully it was impaired by some malfunction. Yeah. Well, listen, if this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.